Yeah,
Vishnu?
I think the point is that where there's a serious lacking at this point in time between the dependency of internal audit and risk management is you don't have the feedback loop. So you will have a situation where you'll have a set of risks and then you'll overlay that with a set of controls. What happens is when internal audit tests those controls, it doesn't feed back into the risk process to say that those controls are effective or not. And this is where the independence is vitally important, in that internal audit begins to confirm that. The second point from an internal audit perspective is, as they get into your business and they begin to do the audits, they actually unpack a lot more risks than we sometimes are aware of. So management might, and again, it probably comes back to the issue of culture and how risk management is embedded within your organization. But you have a situation where internal audit, whilst auditing, begins to reveal risks which then actually should feed back into your chief risk officer, who begins to actually ensure that these are captured on your risk registers and tracked accordingly. I think just on your second point around the evaluation of the internal audit, if I'm not mistaken, if you subscribe to the IIA, once every 2 years, I think it is now. Previously,
once every 5 years.
It used to be once every 5. I think it's changed, Len.
3 years is what many companies are doing.
So you're compelled as an audit committee to ensure that that actually takes place. And it is good practice to do it on an annual basis, because you begin to ensure that you identify any deficiencies that your internal audit has, and then ensure that they actually have a development plan themselves.
Thank you. Thank you for that full answer.
Hi, my name is Luyanda Manogu. Just a few questions. I'd like to say I'm a bit concerned with there was a lot of discussion around the pre-meetings. And I just want to seek clarity as to, are those separate sessions that you're having with external audit, management, and even internal audit, are they minuted anywhere? Because sometimes what I've seen is that these happen to sort of like ease the flow of the meeting itself. But any one of the 3 combined assurance partners who sits in the audit committee scenario may not have the benefit of what was discussed, and therefore it may be that they don't appreciate that those have been trashed out already. So it may seem like there's gaps, that why has the audit committee not tackled and addressed certain issues? So maybe just a comment as to how do you handle those pre-meetings in terms of the minutes? Do they make part of the minutes? Is Secretariat part of those discussions? And if they do, what's the point they're not having pre-meetings, because they'll be minuted, so they'll be tabled in the minutes for discussion? Just maybe clarity on that. And also, I have a feeling that there's a lot of pressure on saving time in the session that we just had. I know there's always pressures cost-wise and just efficiency, which I appreciate. But I think I'm not quite sure how we balance between the pressures of time and costing and the need to be value-adding, to actually give guidance and assistance, so that the whole session is seen as really empowering the entity to see that we have deliberated sufficiently on matters that are on the agenda, rather than being seen purely saying cutthroat, flow through, save time, and we don't want to be here more than 2.5 hours. And also what I wanted to say is that maybe in mature organizations, the 2.5 hours, so like a session would work, but where I come from, where I spend a lot of time in the public sector, some of those sessions you see entities, departments that need a lot of work before you can even get to that session. So to say 2.5 hours, I can tell right now, I don't know what we'd need to do to spend 2.5 hours, because there's literally very little to latch on for us to have such an efficient session. So maybe as a qualifier to say, it depends also on the maturity of the entity that one is looking at. If that one, transformation, LTD, looks like sleeky, everyone is on the ball. But I know areas where it's far from that. So how do you balance the pressure to be seen as an audit committee to be efficient, super sleeky, and on the ball, with the need for management to say, we need you to help us.
All right, let's help you.
And then the last session, Chair, the last one I want to say, there's everyone who needs to be there in the audit committee, but maybe your view onto, I'm looking to see someone who's more operational on the ground. I know the CEO is there, the CFO is there, but wouldn't there be, for example, a COO? Someone, how do you then, as an audit committee, keep your feet on the ground in order to make sense of the liquidity, the going concern, the various issues that give you comfort as to how things are actually running on the ground? Thanks.
All right, you've raised a number of issues. Let me say with great humility, I do mentorship for BUSA, and I have about 30 different mentees And one of the modules that I do on a Saturday morning for 3.5 hours is how to run effective meetings. So let's share with you. I say with great humility again, I've been the chair of the Department of Housing nationally, Lindiwe Sisulu, chair of the Department of Defense, chair of South African Police Services. I've served on National Treasury's Audit Committee, chair of Gauteng Provincial Government, and you've seen my CV. Irrespective of the maturity of the organization, if you spend more than 2.5 hours at a meeting, then there's a level of unpreparedness and the organization might be emerging. So let's unpack the 4 issues that you've raised. Number 1, pre-meetings are highly desirable and they should be held a week to 10 days before the meeting. Those documents are circulated. The pre-meetings are not minuted. They are meetings that take place on a one-on-one between the chair and the head of internal audit together with the support personnel, and one reviews their submission to the meeting. The chair of the audit committee with the chief external auditor together with the manager that was on the assignment. So the purpose, as we've stated earlier, sir, of these pre-meetings is to look at the content that's going to come forward, to look at the issues that are going to be highlighted, to look at the quality thereof, and that it meets the expectations from a plan point of view. So that's the purpose, and I'll repeat, we do not take the minutes, but we share best practice so that the quality of the documents that are circulated are reasonably error-free. The second issue was minutes. I've addressed that. Pressure on audit committee. If you sit at a meeting, and as I say, I teach best practice, and when I first joined the Department of Housing, I had 7 members on the audit committee, and this was 6 years ago. I said to each member, when you come to my audit committee, will you please come with 5 issues that you will raise at the audit committee? So what happened, sir, at the first meeting, I went to Mitesh. He raised 5 issues. Then I went to Gerard. He raised 4 issues. When I got to Neil, Neil said he's only got 2 issues because these individuals had raised the issues already. When I got to Babulwa, she says, I've only got 1 issue. So I changed the format. At the next meeting of the housing, I went to Anna-Marie. What are your 5 issues? Then I went to Gerard, so that the level of preparedness I had raised. The pre-meetings that I have with the members of the audit committee, I also challenge them that either they follow what I call the 5-4 principle. Either they fit in or they flipped out of the audit committee. So we've got the level of competence that is appropriate. I'm a hard taskmaster. I'm known throughout the country and internationally as a liberal autocrat. When you run a meeting, you've got to know, as Tim will tell you, I chaired the audit committee of Unitrans, where he was the partner for 5 or 6 years. We must know what's in here. Some of my students would tell you, I chair audit committee meetings without a paper or an agenda. I commit these things so that I run good meetings. But I take your point that in some emerging organizations that you need to allow for more meeting time. But you can't allow meetings to micromanage the CFO or the CEO by going in, and I can share examples with you. Go and look at the annual report of the SABC from 2 years ago and look at the number of meetings that have been held by both the board and the audit. That becomes a micromanagement exercise. So I don't want to monopolize the discussion, but we also have a situation where we excuse people. So when we shared on the agenda the in-committee meetings, so everybody is not present at the meeting. So I'm happy to chat with you outside. I'm happy to share with you best practice without charge on behalf of Inkonki.